Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 prop preview for the John Deere Classic. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your exposure tomorrow with a look at the averages from today, a weather report for Friday as well, and some exposure on Underdog and Prize Picks to give you an idea of how I'm attacking the slate. And on top of that, we'll also look at some of the matchups on sportsbooks and any bets and deep dives that you've got for me in the chat. But hopefully Thursday treated you guys nicely, ended up being a profitable day for yours truly. Our bet the number slip with Fratelli than the Sanjay Brady Better matchup both ended up hitting. And then for the matchup side of things, we had only the Clanton matchup miss. We had the Keith Mitchell head-to-head against Roy win, and then also our Bridgman matchup cash out. So it was a good day overall, a solid start to our DFS lineups. Let's try and add on top of that here in the round 2 stream. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing started. So first things first, we'll look at the averages from round 1, which were kind of split across the board. So overall, it says minus 1.42, but that doesn't really give the full perspective because in the morning, it played easier than -2, and in the afternoon wave, it played to only a -0.5 average. So with the wind kicking up, also the course getting firmer and faster throughout the day, you saw a very significant difference in that scoring. And with the same kind of forecast for tomorrow, I would expect the same kind of dynamic. So, if you're going to take your positive stance plays, it's likely best to do that on the morning side of things when winds aren't going to be as nasty in the afternoon, and you're going to have more receptive greens to attack. So your birdie average was higher in the morning than the afternoon as well. So obviously on that category as well, right? Overs on birdies, you might want to look at those from the morning wave. And then your bogey average was also similarly split, right? It was higher in the PM wave than it was in the morning. So all these different categories, you really want to keep track of when your player's teeing off. And your fairway average in green average, you can see towards the bottom. Fairway was about 9.3 per round. Green average was a hair lower than last year at only about 12.9 per round. And these kind of averages, I think, are going to be almost spot in line with what we get for round 2, because at first glance, I haven't completely deep dived the pins yet. We're going to do that here on stream. But at first glance, there's some easy pins. There's a few more difficult pin locations. And though the wins might be a little bit more significant tomorrow, the easier holes, so the par 5s in particular, seem to be set up a little bit easier for round 2. So I think even if it is slightly harder conditions-wise, the pins may make up for that a little bit, which is why I think that these averages are going to be pretty accurate. So it's the John Deere at the top, the BMW, which is the DP World Tour event this week. You can see those averages at the bottom there, but because they're calling for thunderstorms, also there's a lot of variance on the different weather forecast in Munich. I'm probably not going to play a whole lot on that side for round 2. It's just too much variance when we have a potential weather delay. Also, some forecasts that are calling for like 5 miles an hour wind, other forecasts that are calling for like 15 to 20 miles an hour plus. So let's focus on our bread and butter here, right? That's the PGA Tour side and what a vast majority of a lot of you guys are here for. And just to go through the weather forecast, I'll show you what I was talking about. The winds are a little bit more significant in the afternoon. And on top of that, because it's going to be 95 degrees Fahrenheit, this course is going to get super toasty in the PM. So I think that you're going to see at least a half a stroke to a 1-stroke advantage towards the AM side of things. Today, it was like 1.5, 1.6 shots. So it might not be as severe as round number 1. I would add that. Maybe it's not going to be as drastic. But if you're taking positive stance plays and there's a half a stroke to a 0.75, maybe 1-stroke advantage towards that side, you want to favor that in most cases. So the next thing we'll look at would be the pin locations for round 2, which you can see on the screen right here. So first off, the hole 1, we have it in the back right corner, which is a kind of weirdly shaped hole. It is a severe dog leg to the left. And on this right corner is a little bit less protected by that bunker. Still a backside pin location, but this is the broad side of the green. So I would say a hair easier than round number 1. Next up, we have 2, which is the first par 5. It is in the back left corner, which if I could not click on that, we'd get a better view. In the back left corner of the screen, which I would say is maybe a hair more difficult than today, just because it's a little bit of a longer shot in. But the around the green shot is very comparable to what you had for round number 1. Sure, a little bit longer to that back corner, but there's not like any sort of shelf that you have to hit over. Even if you hit it in this greenside bunker, you're going to have enough room to get it close. And if you happen to bail out towards the right side and long, like a lot of players will do, with the water towards the front left of the screen, you're going to have all this green to work with to try and hit it back to this back left corner. So overall, I don't think the scoring changes that much at hole 2. Hole 1 was maybe a hair easier. Hole 2 looks ever so slightly more difficult, I would say. Hole 3 is in this middle left side of the green, so it's about where my cursor is now. It's a slightly more difficult pin location than round 1, just because it's on the higher spot of the screen, and there is a little bit of a slope in front of it that you can see under my cursor right now, which could cause you to come back an extra 5 to 10 feet. So just marginally more difficult, though, not going to be a massive difference. Next up, we have 4, which is in the middle right side of the screen, ever so slightly towards the front. So about where my cursor is now. This is an easier pin location than round 1, not just because it's shorter, but also because it's much more wide open. I mean, the around the green shot from this bunker is tedious. You have all that green to work with. If you miss over here towards the right, you have some green. You can even putt it towards that right side pin location. I would say that this one is a 0.05 to maybe even 0.1 stroke difference compared to round 1. Next up, we have hole 5. So hole 5 is the front side pin location. It is towards this front left corner. So you no longer have to carry it over these deep bunkers to get close to it. And you saw some carnage out of the bunkers. You saw people leave it in them today because they're like 5-6 yards deep. And then even people blade it over the back. So over here on the left, that's not going to be as much of an issue. So another easier pin location. So that's 3 easier, 2 harder so far. Next up, we're at 6, which is on the right side of the screen. This looks a hair more difficult, and yeah, for sure, going to be a little bit more difficult than today. Reason for that is now it's on the top right shelf, so it's no longer on the low area like it was for round 1. So going to be slightly harder to get to with the wedge, but it's still going to be one of the more scoreable holes on the course as an extremely short par 4. Next up, we have 7, which is a longer par 3. I would say that they would move up the tee box for rounds 1 and 2, but with this easier pin location, I don't think they have to move up the tee box. It's going to play significantly easier than today just because it's a shorter shot in and it's much less protected on this front right corner. And you can see that there's a ton of slope towards this front right corner that you don't even have to land it on the green. In fact, if you land it just short of the screen and run it onto it, you could get somebody potentially getting close to a hole-in-one with the kind of slope that's there. Next up, you have 8. So that's a really easy pin, by the way. So 8 is a back left pin now. So it's 10 off the left. So it's not really left. It's like back middle more so, about where my cursor is right now. Slightly harder than today, just because kind of like 6. 6 was on that front corner and had some slope behind it. Now it's on this back left corner, so a slightly longer wedge shot, but much like 6, being an extremely easy hole as a short par 4, that's not going to change about 8. You're still going to see a lot of birdies there, just maybe not as much of a cupcake pin location like we had for today. Next up, we have 9, which is one of the harder holes on this golf course. It's a 500-plus yard par 4. It's a slightly harder pin too, so it's a good mix so far, I would say. Kind of going through them real quickly earlier, I didn't catch some of the difficulty of these pins, and especially the ones that are on these top slopes. Like you can see here, there's some slope bisecting the middle of the screen that is going to add some difficulty to around the green shots. So maybe I was wrong about saying that it was a slightly easier pin setup. If that's the case, we'll check out this back 9 as well. Might have to adjust our averages ever so slightly. So let's go to the back 9 now and start with 10, which is an easier, much easier pin location than today. It's closer to the water, so it is going to tempt players to go for it in 2 just because it's a shorter, more manageable shot in. However, it does bring in that risk to the front right side. So you're going to see a higher birdie rate here at hole number 10, but perhaps the same scoring average just because there will be more blowups and doubles with that water hazard closer to the right. Next up, we have 11, which is in the back middle portion of that green. So it's a shorter par 4 and about where my cursor is now. So I would say about the same difficulty as today. Today, it was on top of a shelf. It is a little bit of a longer shot in, but you no longer have that slope just in front of the pin to worry about. It's much flatter in that back left portion. Next up, we have 12, which is on the front right portion of the screen. It's another longer par 3 and a much easier pin than round 1. So unlike round 1, where it was in this back shelf, you had all that slope to deal with. Now it's on the low spot on the front right corner. So yeah, the par 3 seemed to be easier. You've got some easier par 5 pin locations too, at least on 2 of the 3 that we have on the course. Next up, we have 13, which is in the back right of the screen. So it's in this back right lobe. I would say a little bit trickier than round one, but still going to be an easy hole, like 6 and 8. Like these short par fours, you could put it in the hardest possible spot. When players can lay up and then have a wedge in, it's still going to be open season, even to those kind of locations. Next up, we have 14. So this is the drivable par four. This is a more manageable location as well. So I would say there's a chance they move up the tee box here just to entice players to take on the green even more. But this middle left pin will be easier than this back right pin. This back pin is by far the hardest pin that you have at this hole. So kind of interesting that they burned it in round one. Maybe they'll use it in round one and then round four again, just because they're spreading it out like that. And then next 15 is the front right pin location. This one is significantly easier than today. It's a shorter. It's a much easier around the green shot as well. And you don't have this bunker that comes into play. So yeah, it does look a hair easier overall, but you don't want to completely discount it. Like this isn't a moving day setup. This is another easier pin as well. It is a longer shot in, but now it's not close to that penalty area on the left side that can lead to lost balls and like 7s, 8s if you get down there. Now it's on the right side. It's the flat portion of the green as well. So yeah, slightly longer iron, but I actually think you're going to see the scoring average get lower at 16. And then 17 is a par 5. That one is on the middle left side of the screen. That one I would say is a little bit harder than today, just because it's on that high spot, which is a little trickier to get up and down to, as we've mentioned a few times already. And then finally, 18 is towards the middle left of the screen, which does get it mighty fine close to this water. But outside of that, it's an easier pin than today because it's a shorter shot in. You do have the sloping towards the right side to even middle of that green, which is going to help you hit the ball closer towards that pin. I mean, you can even hit the middle of that green, and it's going to get to within maybe 5 to 10 feet of where that pin location is in terms of left to right on that green. That's what you want with a pin location. So I would see a little bit more birdies at 18 with that pin. However, maybe the same kind of scoring average because of the excess of doubles that you'll get in the water as well. So to go back to the averages, I feel pretty good about a -1.5 scoring average. I think in the morning it'll play -2, maybe even a little bit easier than -2. And I think in the afternoon, maybe it doesn't get to the -0.5 like you had for today, but like maybe like -1. So like overall getting to that -1.5 average, about a half a stroke difference either way from the average, depending on what wave that you're in. And birdie average, maybe it goes up ever so slightly to like 4.5 per round. Bogey average, I don't think it's going to move very much. 2.75 per round feels pretty good. And then the fairway and green averages, I wouldn't expect to move that much either. So after seeing conditions, pins, that's what we're expecting for tomorrow. And now let's translate that into some sort of exposure. So we'll go to Underdog. We'll refresh the board on Prize Picks as well to see exactly what sort of props that we have to work with. They do have a DP World Tour board up, but like I said, the weather seems a little bit too variant for my liking. So we're probably going to focus for the majority on these Prize Picks and Underdog props. So Prize Picks has like half their board posted. So at some point, they'll probably post strokes and birdies on top of that. And then on the Underdog side, we have a little bit more of a complete board. So we're going to have those to go through on top of any sort of deep dives that you've got in the chat. So if there's any sort of bets that you want my thoughts on, feel free to go ahead and let me know. But we'll go through a few props on here that I was already eyeing before we got on live stream to give you an idea of how I'm attacking this slate. So let's catch up on chat, see what's going on. A few of you down there. What's going on, Joseph? He said Denny Flatstick on display the next few days. It's a birdie fest, man. That's where Denny McCarthy tends to shine. So cheers to him, and we'll see how he gets it done the next few days. How do I feel about Jason Day under 9.5 fairways? So yeah, I took him under 10 fairways today, and that worked for me quite well. Reasoning for that is that he was number 101 on tour in driving accuracy, which is well below average, of course, on the PGA Tour. So with the average at about 9.29 per round, that was the round one metric. You'd have to think that he's a solid undervalue there. Now, on Prize Picks, they have a few guys at 10 that could make sense for an under. So we'll get to that here right now, actually. So the first prop that I really want to enter, and that we're going to try and find something to pair up with, is the Sam Stevens under on fairway. So he's not at 9.5. He's actually up at 10 on Prize Picks. So we get the push equity at that kind of number. And Sam Stevens, if we go to the off the tee play this year, he's not a terrible driving accuracy player, but he's slightly below average in the category. So number 90 on tour, which the tour average is about 85, as you guys can see right there. He's a little bit worse than the average. So noting that the average today was about 9.29 per round, I'd be projecting him for probably 9.25 to 9 per round, which is why at 10 with the push equity at that kind of number, I love that kind of an under. Now, we don't have the entire board to go through, so we're actually going to stall on the Sam Stevens prop and see if we can come back to it and find something to match up with it, because these better matchups are usually not my favorite props, and I went through all of them before we went on lock here, and none of them really stood out to me. So, and the par props are just absolute crapshoots in my opinion. There can be value on very specific players and very specific scenarios when it comes to pars, but for the vast majority, I like playing fairway green, strokes, and birdie props. So we're going to hold off on finding a pairing for Stevens right now. If we don't end up getting the board while we're on live stream here, that'll be the one prop that we take on the prize pick side. Because as you guys know, I don't force anything in that I don't think makes sense to enter myself. And of course, on the Patreon page, you can find every single prop and slip that I'm taking. So if we don't end up being able to come back to this later, fingers crossed that we can, of course, that'll be the one thing for prize picks. But on the underdog side, we have a lot more value to go through. And in fact, we could even take Stevens over here. And it's not out of question that we'll just take a 2-man over here for our live stream slip. But he's at 9.5, which I think is still a fair line. Like I said, I project him for like 9 to maybe 9.25 per round. With a multiplier towards the under, I actually think that that could be decent value to enter. So I do prefer him at 10 with the push equity at that number. So that's why that was my first choice with that Stevens prop. But with the multiplier, there's a lot of utility there as well. So I was looking at a few fades for strokes too, specifically with the PM wave players. Like I said, I think it could be a stroke difference between the morning and the afternoon. So if it's a stroke and a half under par for the field, those PM guys could be playing to about a -1 scoring average. So when we take a look at the board on Underdog, they've got a lot of guys at 68.5 strokes, which is a -2.5 projection. And on some players, it makes sense. Like the above average, the elite tier players, you project them for a stroke, maybe a stroke and a half gain to the field. I get it, right? That's how you get them to 68.5. However, you have guys on the board here that are far from average players that I would say are below average players, and that would be putting it nicely for them that you might want to fade at that 68.5 mark. So I'm kind of hoping we can get something on prize picks to mix in with it instead. But if we have to get a backup over here, Underdog might not be the worst place to do it either. So let's scroll down here and see who we can take for a fade. So I was looking at this Matt Kuchar one first. I mean, like he's the worst player that you have at that kind of number. The 2.67x payout isn't the absolute best, but I've also seen worse payouts. What we want to check on though would be the shots gained metrics, which today were pretty decent for Cooch. He gained across all 4 categories. His most significant gain was around the green, though, which is a bit of a red flag. And overall, he gained over 2.5 strokes with the short game, which is a bit unsustainable for anyone, let alone somebody like Kuchar, who's not always the best short game player, at least with the putter. Like he's usually pretty good around the green, but not always the most consistent putter at this age. So a Kuchar, he could be a player that we would bet against, but that 0.86x multiplier does kind of ruin that whole Sam Stevens multiplier for us, right? We're getting less than a normal payout just because of how that works. So we could try and take somebody else. So like Ricky Fowler was in consideration for me as well. He's a little bit of a better player than Kuchar. I think most people would agree with that. He was much higher in the betting odds for this kind of week. But if we took those two together, it would be a 3.1x payout. So it's a 0.4 unit difference or a 0.43 unit difference between those two different slips, which isn't something that we can ignore. The shots gained metrics, let's take a look at that for Ricky Fowler. So he gained over 3 strokes on approach today. That would be the issue there because he actually lost strokes putting and still shot -6, which shows you how well he was hitting the ball. And that was also after a slow start. He still got to -6. He made all of those birdies to offset the bogey production. So maybe we stay away from the Ricky Fowler fade. I was looking at it before. I was kind of scared off of it when I looked at how he played today. And this is the kind of golf course at Birdie Fest where Ricky Fowler historically has had a lot of success at. Like he's played well at the Players. He's played well in a few major championships at times. But most of his wins, most of his like top 5s, especially recently, have been at Birdie Fest style events. So I wish we could take Sam Stevens with 2 props at the same time. That would kind of be nice there because like, his over on strokes at that kind of number might make sense as well. But obviously, you can't enter the same guy for the same slip and 2 different spots. So like Emiliano Grillo, like maybe that's one we could take. But the issue with Grillo is that his form heading in is great, especially on ball striking. And today he had really good ball striking form too. So I just kind of wait. I kind of want to see what we get for these boards when they're posted, especially for my exposure that I'm mixing in. But like, I wouldn't be against mixing in any of these leans. And we could look at the birdie or better board too. So there are a few guys at 4.5 birdies that I don't think should be at that sort of number. I'm just curious what the payout's going to look like. So it's not like I want to take Homa. I'm just using this to see the payout. It would be a 3.1x payout. So if we can find a birdie or better prop that makes sense, perhaps we go in that direction instead. So I am looking for an under. Hoshino would be a great one to take, but that's only 2.82x. So let's see if we can find somebody at even money in 4.5 that makes a little bit more sense. And just to do our research and get ahead of that, let's go to the stats. Let's go to scoring and bring up our birdie or better stats and see what we can find. So I want to look at Damon's birdie or better. I also want to take a look at the Zanehoot's birdie or better ranking this year. So let's go through those two. So Damon, number 120. Yeah, well below average. And then Seabez as well. So Seabez is number 158 on tour in that category. And let's see how they played in round one. So Joel Damon, really good ball striking stats. Kind of scares me off of wanting to fade him. But let's look at Zanehoot. So Seabez has not had the best form heading in, and he lost across both ball striking categories, and he's number 158 on tour in birdie or better percentage. Now, is he a PM wave player? No. That's the unfortunate aspect of that. If he was a PM wave player, he had the form working against him, and he was number 158 on tour, that would be almost a no-brainer. Now, it still could work at that kind of number, but let's see what else we can find on the board that could perhaps be better. So let's look at Justin Lauer. So he doesn't strike me as an aggressive player. And yeah, he's number 118 on tour. He's PM wave, so we know that ahead of time. And let's look at the shots gained metrics. So he shot -7. He had one of the best rounds of the entire day. So I guess unsurprisingly, he was really good with the ball striking stats. I'm not against fading him, though. A lot of times you see those guys kind of come back down to earth the next day. Don't really always go low 2 days in a row, especially if he's on the harder side of things. So I don't know. We'll throw him in there. We'll kind of decide between those after the fact. We could go a Kuchar. Kuchar doesn't make a ton of birdies. I know he's been a little bit better this year, but let's see where that puts him. Number 150 on tour. And the stats today were pretty decent. He did shoot -3. But as we were saying before, I gained over those 2.5 strokes in the short game. He actually, because he's PM wave, he could be the guy that we would take for an under. And I know it's a birdie fest course. This is an easy course. So a lot of you are like, why are you looking at unders? It's just that they take it too far on these, right? Like, you know, a birdie fest is only a birdie fest until a certain point. The birdie average today was only 4.4 per round. In the afternoon, when the conditions were harder, it was closer to like 4.25 per round. So for Kuchar, right, who is already struggling at making birdies, number 150 on tour this year in the category, that's why I would be on that sort of a lean. And because Prize Picks hasn't given us a board quite yet, and we can't sit around here forever, that's going to be the slip that we take for the live stream here. So I wish that we had Stevens at 10 and could take him with that push equity. But the beauty of this, of taking it this way, is that we could take the two fades and get higher than a 2.5x payout. Because, for example, if you wanted to take the Stevens under and then match it up with a fade on Prize Picks, like, for example, let's assume that they had stuff that we could take for fades. It would only be at a 2.5x payout. In fact, like if you took two unders on fairways together, you can see that exact payout right there. So that's the benefit to doing it this way, is that we still get over that base 3x payout on two props that I would say are value. And I don't even know what Kuchar is for the sportsbook odds, but I am assuming he's probably juiced for the under. I've kind of come to find that the sportsbooks have no idea what they're talking about with these. So just gone to ignore them as time has gone on. But yeah, he's -135 for the under. So I guess a little bit of extra juice in our direction there. Let's see, any specific bet questions? So Ricky under 10 fairways, that's one you could look at. I prefer Stevens just because he ranked a little bit lower on that list, but a lot of the same things can be said. In fact, if I show you the stats for Ricky, he has hit a few more fairways this year, but he's not elite in the category. So to show you that, Ricky Fowler is number 51 on tour in the category. So yeah, I would lean under, but try and find guys that are a little bit lower, I would say. What's going on? Bryce says, hey, Luke, you know, he can't put sleeper up on here, but would I mind skipping through it before I get off? I can, Bryce. I prefer to kind of keep that for my Patreon members, but I'll do it real quickly. We're not going to spend more than like maybe a minute doing so, just because it's kind of dead air on this live stream, this video, if people are watching it, and I don't want them to kind of click off of it too quickly. But yeah, looking through it, there's some guys at 68.5 that are kind of catching my eye. But a lot of times what I've noticed with these guys is that they just match the sportsbook odds. That's what Sleeper's done to their algorithm. They just have them matching the DraftKings odds. And based on what I'm seeing right here, that's what it looks like to me. So like there could be some value on unders, like Seabez, for example, he's at 4.5 birdies. Some of those other guys that we were line shopping at that 4.5 mark for potential unders, they're even money to maybe even juiced a little bit towards the over. So you could take them for unders at like 1.85 to 1.9x multipliers and get like 3.1 to 3.2x payouts. I wouldn't be against that. In fact, that might be what I do for my Patreon members afterwards. And at 4.5, they do have some guys at 4.5 birdies that I would actually like for overs, like your elite tier players, like your Cam Champs, your Eric Coles, Jacob Bridgman's, like kind of makes sense. But they're at that 1.5x mark. So like I said, matching the DraftKings odds is mostly what they've been doing. But the thing that I like about Sleeper is that they set them based on the initial DraftKings odds, and then they don't account for them. So tomorrow morning, if you're quick about it, you can catch them before they do any of that line movement. So yeah, they're pretty similar to a DraftKings, pretty similar to an Underdog is what that means as well, because Underdog does that same exact thing. They just look at the DraftKings odds and then they replicate the board based on that. So those two that we took, they don't have fairways up, I guess. So we couldn't take the Stevens under, but that birdie or better under, like Kuchar. Let's see, do they have them up on here? I'm assuming they do. They usually have Matt Kuchar props up for golf. If I could spell his name right, I could get it up. Yeah, so they have him at 4.5. He is juiced towards the under, though. Yeah, like I said, they just match DraftKings too much for me to like it. Do I do anything with Underdog drafts on my Patreon? I do not, but I do stuff for DraftKings DFS, which can be usable for Underdog, but it's not going to be specifically for that. The way that you could do it for yourself, though, Ben, is that you could take your projections and then just run a rank on them on Excel, and then you could get your rankings that way, right? Because you could just look at the projected points, use that as your ranking system. The points are a little bit different on Underdog compared to DraftKings, but I do focus my content towards the more scaled stuff. More people play DraftKings. I play DraftKings professionally when it comes to playing DFS. So that's what I put the content out for. But there are a lot of people that use the content for Underdog drafts. It's just not specifically made for that. Rico Hoey couldn't score for crap today, but he was hitting it well. Amen to that. He gained like 7 strokes ball striking, so the numbers back it up as well. He said Underdog, he's 1.89 for the top 10 round 2. Ooh, those top 10 bets, man, I just can't get to it because he's starting outside the top 10. He's starting at T17. So that means that he's got to shoot like 1 stroke better than the field average, maybe even 2 strokes better than the field average to crack that top 10. So if it's only a 1.89x multiplier, that is not fair odds. You don't want to take that. It makes absolutely no sense, because why not just take his normal strokes under for close to those kind of odds? Because it's going to be a much easier thing to do. Because Rico Hoey, I think he's at like 68.5 strokes. That's like gaining 1 stroke to the field, right? And you're getting close to the same kind of odds on that. And to top 10 tomorrow, he's going to have to shoot like -5, -6 to get into the top 10. So I would much rather take him to shoot -3 than to have to shoot like -5, maybe -6 to top 10. So I would probably stay away from that one. And you said you're in the Patreon, so you're fine waiting on that. Yeah. So and also it just takes a lot longer to go through the sleeper board because you have to look at every single multiplier, right? It's not just like looking at the projection. So that's another reason that it's not as easy to do on the live stream here. So yeah, if you're on the Patreon, you get to see those later anyways. And the live stuff is the way to go on Sleeper, man. That's where a lot of the value's been for me. You said appreciate that, of course, man. It's I hate to talk you off of stuff, but it's true. Like, I just think you could find better value, I would say. And let's round this off with some matchups. Like I said, for every single slip that I take on Underdog Prize Picks, those will be on my Patreon later on, as well as anything on Sleeper. But I have some matchups I was looking at as well, and I don't have the Hard Rock Bet board up yet, so I can't say I'm taking all of these myself quite yet, but they usually have very similar odds to DraftKings and FanDuel. So if I can get the same number on these 5 matchups, if not even a slightly better number on Hard Rock Bet, I'll be taking all of them myself. So first off is this Thurston Lawrence versus Cootie and this Ubry guy. Cootie, first off, shot +8 today. He looked completely lost. So I hate to completely like trash him, but he should not be the favorite against Thurston Lawrence. And then this Huber guy, he's a Monday qualifier, and he's like 19 years old or something like that. So I'm almost kind of like taking him out of the matchup. And then you've got Cootie, who shot +8 today against Lawrence, who gained across all 4 stat categories, has been in contention 2 of his last 3 starts. So yeah, give me Lawrence at +125. Also, Cam Champ versus Willett and Perez. Champ gained in his ball striking today. Willett had a pretty crappy round across the board, but Perez, he had the more respectable round between the 2 guys that Champ is going against. But Perez gained 5 strokes putting, or like 4.75 shots gained to putting. So yeah, give me Cam Champ, who did it with the ball striking instead, especially at +150. Next up, we got this Ben Coles matchup versus Rogers and Bramlett. First off, Bramlett, he doesn't even have full-time status anymore, so I'm not going to completely trash him, but like, yeah, he should probably be like the 3rd odds guy, in my opinion, not Ben Coles. And then Patrick Rogers, he's your quote-unquote favorite here. P-Rod hasn't been playing that well over the last few months. So Ben Coles, by the way, if you look at his shots gained metrics, he gained a bunch of strokes on approach today. He gained a bunch of strokes on approach last week, but lost strokes with the putter, which was his issue at last week's event as well. But bent grass, which is the surface for this week, is like by far his best surface on the tour. So give me some Ben Coles for a bounce back. Matt McCarty, too. I'll also take him to have a bounce back day. He's +140. By the way, the +200 in Coles I thought was really disrespectful. That's part of the reason that I sprinkled him in, or I want to sprinkle him in if I can get this kind of odds on Hard Rock. And then this Matt McCarty one, too. He gained ball striking today, but lost with the around the green and putting. In fact, over 2 strokes in the short game categories. And historically, Matt McCarty is one of the best short game players that we have in this field. One of the best putters, period, on the PGA Tour. A solid gainer around the green, particularly on bent grass, which is the surface that he won on during the fall swing. So yeah, give me him at +140 versus Dunlap, who we know that he's spraying it. You can kind of take him out of that matchup. And then Goddard, who is playing some pretty good golf, but today he looked a little bit off for his first 9 holes. And McCarty's +140, so he's a little bit of a long shot at that number. And then finally, we have this Chan Kim one as well, who is the 2nd favorite in that group. They have Valimaki as the 1st favorite, which I don't really agree with. And then Grayson Sigg has been struggling on the PGA Tour. Chan Kim, by the way, if you look at his shots gained from round number 1, he gained off the tee, gained on approach, and lost in the short game categories. So another player that could be due for some short game regression. So if you can give me the same, if not better odds on those 5 matchups, I'll be mixing those in myself as well. But on top of that, the Patreon page will be where I'm posting every single matchup that I'm able to enter. And let's have ourselves a round 2. And on top of that, right, it's an hour and a half until the 4th of July. Happy 4th to all my fellow Americans out there. Happy Independence Day, establishing what I think is the greatest nation in the entire world. So if you're drinking some brews, you're hanging out with your buddies tomorrow, cheers to that. Celebrate responsibly, of course. And we are going to be doing live streams tomorrow night. So I'm going to be celebrating a little bit earlier. We're actually doing an afternoon cookout with my buddies, not hanging out at night. They want to go to clubbing or something like that in Miami. I have absolutely no interest in going clubbing tomorrow night. So I'll be with you guys on the live stream after those festivities. So for all of that, make sure to stop on by tomorrow night. Smash the like button on this live stream if you guys haven't already, though. And also subscribe so you guys don't miss that when it's live. For rounds 3 and 4, we'll be doing live streams just like we have here, getting you guys ready for every single day of action, as well as for every single event on the rest of the schedule. So make sure to check out the Patreon for every slip as I enter it. Follow along on the YouTube here for all the content throughout the rest of the weekend. And of course, on top of the prop stuff that I have on there, guys, we also have the DFS sheet for every single round. So this is the round 2 showdown sheet, for example, with my entire player pool for Friday. We've got projected ownership for showdown. That's for round 2 only contests on DraftKings. Also projected fantasy points. So I know we had the question about like the underdog drafts. Like you could take these projected fantasy points, which will be a little bit different, right, than underdog scoring, and then use those for your rankings on your underdog stuff. So make sure to check that out if you guys haven't already. But that's all I've got for this round 2 live stream. Cheers, and I'll see you guys throughout the rest of the weekend.